Welcome back to Tech Tribe, the podcast where we explore the people, ideas, and tech shaping the digital world. I'm your host, Ivana Paskoska, and in this episode, we're looking at the future of payments with Michael Schoch. He's with a background in economics and years of experience in shaping the digital payment solutions. He's now focused on payment networks. And today, he's here to talk with us about the future of payments and secure remote commerce, or as we will mention it many times in our conversation, SRC. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Okay, so I have a very short question to start our conversation. So I'm a consumer, right? Why should I care about SRC? And we've actually talked about passkeys and passwordless in a previous episode, passwordless authentication. And SRC builds on that by embedding those secure logging methods directly into the checkout, right? But why, again, why should I care?
Well, there's several reasons actually, and still you might not come across the term SRC all that much because on the customer or consumer-facing side, we're talking about click-to-pay mostly as the element of the overall system that is used for the checkout experience. But to answer your question, so first of all, because it saves time, helps all of us, I think, in the checkout experience. It protects our data. It works everywhere across different merchant devices and car brands. And so it allows for a way smoother experience that we have been having so far with a standard card checkout. So you only enter your card details once during enrollment, if even at all, if you're not already enrolled by your issuer. And after that, it's just a couple of clicks, basically a state-of-the-art checkout experience for consumers. That means no passwords to remember, no retyping 16-digit numbers, and to focus on what every consumer actually wants, the product and a smooth checkout experience.
And if I'm a payment network, why should I care as a payment network?
Also here, various reasons. So first of all, payment networks are in different situations and face different challenges. So they are, first of all, the most known ones, the global ones, Visa, MasterCard, and they are oftentimes front runners and pave the way for what is to come in the future of the payment industry. And then there's others, there's domestic schemes and payment networks that focus on one specific market. And then there's everything in between. And all of those have different challenges. But I think what all of them also have in common is that they're interested in things like brand protection. So SRC lets you deliver a world-class, state-of-the-art checkout experience under your own brand, not under anyone else's. And that is something that no matter how big you are, no matter in which market you are, that is relevant to you. Also, it allows you to own the customer relationship. So you keep control of the cardholder data, the transaction insights, the user experience, and so on. Various elements that are relevant to schemes, to payment networks, no matter where they are, no matter how big they are. It drives transaction growth. So it reduces checkout friction, it boosts conversion rate, card users, and merchant adoption. And all those things are also, again, relevant to whoever. It reduces fraud, it reduces operational costs, it applies technologies like network tokenization, strong customer authentication, and if you're able to cut fraud losses and reduce costly disputes, that is something that everybody should be interested in. And also, it can be seen as kind of a trampoline in a way. So what we're providing and what SRC is not only a system for a checkout experience, but it's also a future-proof way to take the next step. So we build it in a modular way, and it allows on top of the secure remote commerce part to adjust to various future-proof standards and solutions. So it makes it easier to integrate into services like passkeys, like token on file, or like other 3DS secure enhancements.
Yeah, so in a previous conversation, we discussed how fraud prevention needs to become invisible to the user, right? And SRC follows the same principle of security by design, but without adding friction. What trends would you say you're seeing right now pushing SRC adoption forward?
So we're seeing various things in the industry overall. transactions, checkout experience are not only secure, it's not enough anymore at this point in 2025. But consumer expectations are shaped by what they see as solutions from the big players globally. They expect fast, they expect frictionless, and they expect secure on top. And everything we have combined here as well. They also, we're seeing that there's regulatory pressure. So us being based in Europe, we're faced with PSD2 requirements a lot, of course, but we're also noticing that in markets all around the world, there's adjustment and there's programs and measures to step up through those standardizations that we see maybe established in Europe first or in other parts of the world first, but that have become standards and will be rolled out globally more and more. Also, on top of that, there's cross-border commerce growth. So markets are not limited and disconnected from other parts of the world. But we need ways and measures to connect those and to still provide a consistent user experience across devices, across browsers, networks, and borders. And this is also part of SRC's system. And what we're also seeing is a desire from domestic schemes to remain competitive. So even though standards at first might be defined somewhere else in the world, there's still a seat at the table to be part of the conversation going on from here. And that is important to a lot of players.
Since you mentioned domestic schemes, and I've had this in one of the previous episodes, so we've discussed the tension between domestic schemes and the global wallets. SRC is really where that plays out at the checkout. But domestic schemes have loyal customers. Why do they still need SRC to compete?
They're very loyal customers. So everywhere we have been in touch with opportunities or even customers of the service, we have realized that in their specific markets, these domestic providers of solutions are very much respected and loved, and there is some big loyalty there. But that might not be enough forever. And we need to make sure that this loyalty also can be around in the future. And so there are several elements that I think a domestic scheme needs to focus on to make sure that they're in the same position or even a stronger position in the future. So for one, when we're talking, for example, about e-commerce cart abandonment rate, that is around 70%, meaning that 7 out of 10 shoppers do not complete their purchase due to some kind of friction in the checkout experience. And that is way too much. Also, additionally, in Europe, 84% of online shoppers have abandoned a purchase before finalizing it. And 1 in 4 even do so regularly. Also that, way too much. And so click to pay, as mentioned before, the consumer-facing component of secure remote commerce can actually save up to 20 seconds per transaction, which is a lot. Additionally, by the use of tokenization, fraud can be improved by 91% even, and the authorization rates can be improved by 10%. And those three figures combined have a huge impact on how the stronger checkout experience improve revenue and overall loyalty and impression of consumers how to use a domestic scheme.
And when you look at a secure remote commerce, the adoption story seems pretty different in developed versus emerging markets, right? Yeah. Why do you think that is? And what's the takeaway for domestic schemes in markets that are already quite mature?
Well, our customers and potential customers are facing very different challenges depending on the situation that the market they're operating in currently is in. So on the one hand side, when we're talking to customers, to payment networks in developed markets like Europe or in North America or even parts of Asia, they've already oftentimes set up a high level of standardization, talking about 3S, for example, but also about other kinds of regulation. And for them, it oftentimes is about having to have a seat on the table with the global networks to define the standards and the handling the processes of these e-commerce cart checkouts of the future. So to not just have the big players define the playing field of the future, but to be part of that conversation. And that is very relevant. And they should get into that conversation rather sooner than later. would be very much my recommendation. Then on the other hand side, in emerging markets, SRC can actually be kind of a leapfrog technology. So maybe the standardizations are not established as much as in other parts of the world, but this can be an opportunity for domestic networks to make use not only of secure remote commerce, but also of the attached technologies and services that we provide to go along with it. So that can be tokenization, that can be passkeys, that can be stand-in 3DS, that can be all kinds of solutions that we provide in a modular way that are not necessary connected through the service, but that go very well along with it and extend the service not only for our customers, but also for the consumers that in the end use the service.
And are merchants pushing for SRC adoption too, or it's mostly driven by schemes and issuers?
They are. As you can see always, if there is some way or form how card abandonment rates can be reduced and conversion rates can be increased, merchants are always interested in that. So SRC actually does both by simplifying the checkout. So the push sometimes depends a bit on the market, maybe comes more from the payment network side of things. But as soon as merchants and also PSPs realize and notice the advantages of the service and of the specifications, they're very much interested in our experience.
Interesting. And we've all been witnesses, of the SRC moving from concept to adoption, real world adoption really quickly, right? And all the expectations somehow keep rising. But if we look ahead, what would you say it's like best practice would look like for an SRC system? What should all the networks be aiming for?
Several things. I think security first is still very relevant, even though we mentioned before that security only is not enough nowadays. But without security, it also is not worth thinking about it even. So that means using tokenization as a baseline to use secure remote commerce and also use strong customer authentication. Those should be foundations and not afterthoughts to use in the context of SRC. So that means using tokenization. Every transaction would use a secure, unique digital token rather than the actual card number. And that provides several advantages that we might go into a bit later. But then also using multifactor authentication, methods like OTPs, passkeys, we've already mentioned also, that could be embedded seamlessly and protect both cardholders and merchants and improve the overall service tremendously. But then also when we're talking about interoperability, so a proper SRC system would work across all major card networks. It's not limited to the network of our customer, but it's interoperable with global networks. We oftentimes see co-branded cards, and here it provides a tremendous service. It's interoperable between browsers, devices, and so on. So we do not have limitations in any kind of form in this area. It provides a frictionless UX. So even though security is critical, but we also need a great user experience. So we need to have in this form maybe not only user enrollment to be able for our consumers to allow them to become part of an SRC system, but for issuers already to allow them to bulk or automatically enroll users into the system so that consumers do not even have to worry or bother with that at all, but that it becomes an automatic way of using cards in an e-commerce checkout scope. And then we are talking, of course, about future readiness. So the payment landscape always evolves. It never stands still. And so the best-in-class SRC systems are built to the latest EMVCo specification, that is 1.4 as of right now, even though we're already talking about the next iteration of it. But that's the latest version as of now. And then, of course, we're also talking about cloud-native architecture, something that provides scalability to grow with the other parts of your ecosystem. And then we're also talking about the modular features that are easily connected, that I also mentioned so token on file, passkeys, for example, 3DS on behalf services, many to be mentioned here. But those would be the four main areas that I would say are what define a best-in-class system as of now.
And who else is in the game?
Of course, the big international payment networks, so being Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, also to be mentioned, and they all operate their own SRC systems. So some domestic card networks as well are building their own, but it's always, everybody knows the decisions about buy or make. And so not for every network, it makes sense to build it themselves. And so our solution is actually network agnostic. So it works with global brands and with domestic networks, and it gives schemes the capabilities to work it from scratch without having to build it themselves and to enjoy all the opportunities and chances that come along with it in the future as well.
So does that mean that you're going head to head with the big four, or it's a bit of a different kind of a relationship?
I wouldn't say so. So they focus on their cards. They have their focus, and we're actually more of a technology provider, I would say. So we empower domestic card networks to offer equivalent capabilities under their brand. So to get to enjoy all the benefits with their own cost structure, with their own data control, but not having to worry to build up a development team that is able to build it from scratch, to maintain it over a longer period of time. But we'll take care of all that.
And what measurable benefits can the card networks expect from SRC system adoption?
First of all, I would say lower fraud rates. So using tokenization here makes an immense difference. Also, authorization approvals rise significantly, mostly based on richer transaction data. So we have more data fields, more data to be analyzed, and so make better decisions based on that. We have reduced checkout time. I mentioned the 20 seconds before. That is also very significant, and we can see in e-commerce that every second makes a difference in how likely it is that the consumer actually finalizes the checkout. And due to that, we then have lower cart abandonment rates. So all those things combined make a lot of difference.
Yeah, and the 20 seconds faster it comes up. It keeps coming up. So, but how is that achieved? Why does it matter so much? How do you achieve the 20 seconds faster?
It matters because we always have to be honest in a way, I would say, that even though we might enjoy payments a lot because we work in the field and we are passionate about it, most consumers do not necessarily enjoy the payment part of the checkout. They want a product. So cutting every second of that actual payment part is what helps them get the product easier and faster. And that's why the reduction then in the abandonment rates plays such a big role. So we achieve that actually by eliminating repetitive data entry and by using automatic device recognition. Those are two big fields where when your device is automatically recognized, you skip the manual data entry of the 16-digit card number, and you go straight to the card selection, confirmation, authentication happening seamlessly in the background, and you experience a state-of-the-art checkout experience as it's to be expected nowadays. And that means that users can actually focus on what they want to get closer and faster to the product they want and not to worry about the payment as such.
Yeah. It would, I've mentioned this several times in the past episodes also with previous guests that we discussed similar topics. Passkeys, click to pay, that it would definitely make every consumer's life a lot easier, right? Now, we've mentioned security, and we've talked how it's often strongest when it's invisible. But in practice, extra checks and layers can still feel like friction for users, as I mentioned. And how do you strike that perfect balance, if there is perfect balance, keeping things safe without making the experience harder for the user?
Yeah. I think the ideal as of now would be actually to make use of technology as much as possible, because we have immense possibilities nowadays with tokenization, most in the foreground in this. So we don't have to make consumers' life miserable just to make it safe. We have other ways to do that. And so I just mentioned tokenization using network tokens in this context. It allows us to not use actual card numbers, but to use a token, and that being combined in a one-time transaction cryptogram makes the transaction so much more secure, because if the token is intercepted, it's useless. There's no reverse engineering where the real card details can be extracted from it. So we're providing an immense additional layer of security on top of it without burdening the consumer in any way or form. And so because those tokens are issued and managed by the card networks token service provider, they can be automatically updated as well. So we do not have the problem as we might have had in the past, where a card runs out at some point, and then the consumer every couple of years has to reintegrate or reapply for a service. But that is automatically done in the background, and nobody has to worry about that anymore in the future. And then in addition to that, something that maybe is a bit more established already for a couple of years now, we have multifactor authentication. So that can be OTPs, 3 secure, as it's, I guess, at this point already very well known, but also passkeys, something that has been around also under different names for a while now, be it FIDO or other terminologies. But that is the future of where we want to go with this, and also something that we have already planned very tightly as a service connecting to the SRC system, because it just makes too much sense to not do so.
Yeah. And what happens when a consumer uses co-branded cards?
It actually depends a bit on the country. So we have different markets, and with those, of course, come along different kind of regulations. So in some markets, we see that merchants are provided with the choice of which card to be used for the checkout. And so for the consumer, basically what they see in their click-to-pay checkout experience is the card as it looks like in physical form and design in their wallet, displayed also as a selectable card in the checkout. And so for them, it doesn't make a difference on first glance if it's the global network that is being used or if it's the domestic network being used. In any case, they will get the product. The checkout is being completed as such. But then there's also other markets where the consumer actually gets to decide which card network to use. And so in this co-branded case, that could be either the global network or the domestic network. And the consumer could decide maybe on some form of bonus program, if something like that exists, and then get benefits from something like that. But in any case, no matter which card will be selected, the checkout experience will be a smooth one.
Okay. What's changing in the payment landscape that makes SRC even more relevant?
Well, in previous years, I think we have seen a lot of change, and it's continuous. I think it's probably never stopping, and it's more about continuously adapting to what we see. Payments have become a lot more invisible and blended into the user journey. So it's not the biggest part of the checkout experience, but ideally it's, from the consumer perspective, the smallest. So whether it's subscription renewals, whether it's in-app purchases or IoT transactions, consumer nowadays actually expect speed and minimal friction. So it's not one or the other. It always needs to be both. And in that, SRC actually fits perfectly because it works everywhere. It works without requiring proprietary hardware and proprietary software. And so that makes it very easy and very adaptable to all kinds of situations.
And do you see SRC as competing with wallets like Apple Pay or Google Pay?
It's always a matter of definition, I would say. But so both the solutions you mentioned are actually great from a consumer perspective, I would say. But they have a kind of a different focus. So wallets are great in mobile-heavy scenarios, in my experience, but SRC works everywhere. It works across devices and browsers, and it doesn't have any kind of dependency on specific platforms or ecosystems. And because of that, there's not so much of a competition here, but rather, I would say, some coexistence that's possible.
Hmm. In our Click to Pay episode, we talked about how trust and smooth user experiences are becoming the real currency in digital payments. And if we look at Click to Pay through that lens, where does SRC system sit in the bigger ecosystem? How does it help deliver on their promises?
Mm-hmm. Well, the SRC system is basically a scheme level backbone, I would say. So it orchestrates participants' interactions, it binds consumer profiles, and it stores digital cards and tokens. In a way, at least to some degree, I would say it's a bit comparable to the directory server that we know from the 3D Secure specification and ecosystem. And from there on, it connects actually to two different building blocks. One on the merchant and acquirer side, that is the SSCI component, the click to pay part that we have mentioned before. And that delivers a pre-certified and network agnostic way to add click to pay to a checkout. So it shortens the merchant onboarding and time to market that merchants and PSPs are faced with a lot. On the issuer side, that would be the other side of the SSC system component. There is push provisioning that allows banks to enroll cards into the SRC system directly from their own apps, but also from channels in real time. And so it then skips basically the cardholder's needs to manually enter the card details first to enroll in it. Makes their life even smoother and easier. And I assume that will be the future of how we see SRC system to be used, that it becomes the new standard, that consumers are automatically enrolled by their issuers, and it just becomes normal that this is the standard way to check out if you're willing to use your credit card in an e-commerce context. So all of this together, the SRC system with the SRCI component on merchant and PSP side and the issuer components on the other side, we have a whole secure remote commerce ecosystem. And all of those components are modular, but they're interoperable. They work well together. And having all of them provides a tremendous amount of flexibility and scale and the opportunity to test various use cases and be ready for what's next.
But could a card network start with the SRC system and add the others later?
Absolutely. So what the SRC system as such offers is just the core. It's the base necessity to become part of secure remote commerce. And so the components that are beyond the SRC system as such, as just mentioned, passkeys, various other services, they can be added later. They can be added at any point of time. And so actually the card network can grow at their own speed and pace, and then adjust and add whenever necessary.
Okay, so one final question. What advice would you give to payment networks considering SRC?
I would say not to wait. Not to wait for others to define the cardholder experience. Not to wait for others to define the standards and specification of the future, but to become part of that process. And it's easy. Those specifications, those rules, processes, and standards are being defined in real time between all the participating parties of the system. And everybody can become part of that. Every payment network, every domestic scheme. And I would really advise for them to become part of that play, of that discussion, get their seat at the table, and define and shape the future of their consumers' experience when it comes to card payments.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your insights today and joining our episode.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for Tech Tribe's episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for listening to the conversation. I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check out our earlier episodes for more context on where the future of digital commerce is headed. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep it simple, safe, and reliable.